Hello and welcome to the 5 o'clock hour of the Tuesday afternoon radio show with your host, Randall Martin, right here on WGXC 90.7 listener supported radio. And we're going to continue our conversation. Earlier today, we were talking with John Brigham and we were talking about constitutional law, the role of the presidency, the role of the Supreme Court, and it was a great conversation. If you didn't hear it, you can check the archives and you will be able to hear it back again, or you also can hear it on my Facebook page. But today, this afternoon, we're going to be talking to Bill Hughes. For those who frequent listeners to the station, you know that Bill is a great local politician who's a former supervisor from an alderman, and now he's with the Democratic World Conference that happened. And we're going to talk about a person that's very close and familiar to and beloved, I think, right here, and especially in Columbia County, Antonio Delgado, and what happened with his campaign, among other things we're going to talk about. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm doing good. And also, so that your audience knows, I serve as the 106th Assembly Democratic State Committeeman, and one of our big roles is picking state candidates and going to the state convention, which happens every 4 years. So that transpired a couple weeks ago, which was followed by Antonio bowing out of the race.
And that's exactly what I wanted to delve into first, because I was involved a lot with his events. We did a sound and staging for him up here in Westchester, in New York City, and of course I loved his message and what he was talking about, and I really felt that he had so much to bring to our state as governor. So I was very disappointed when I heard that, but I understood the circumstances. I know that you're a close advisor. You know him personally. You guys talk frequently. Take me through what happened at the convention and a little bit about how the convention operates, and then take me through what happened.
So the state convention happens every 4 years, and it's usually a big event, almost like when you do our national convention, where you're naming the presidential candidate, and you come out and there's a bunch of speeches that takes place, and you go for dinner, and it's a big networking event, really, between all your state committee people, but also all like your assemblymen and senators and candidates. It really is a big networking event for state level politics. And so this year the event was in Syracuse. Syracuse was very welcoming. It was actually warmer in Syracuse than it was in Hudson, which is crazy. But Syracuse was very welcoming. But the event itself was not set up like the normal convention. I mean, they had us spread out over a few hotels, transportation to and from the convention center was not convenient, but we got through it, right? And we had a great breakfast that was put together by Tom DiNapoli. For all the state committee people who got up early enough. The breakfast was at 7:00, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm not a morning person." So that's how the event runs. Generally, what we do at the convention is we have the opportunity to put statewide candidates on the ballot. That means attorney general, state controller, and governor. And the way that happens is everybody is assigned a weighted vote based on your population, just sort of like we do the weighted vote, up here on the Board of Supervisors. And obviously, Brooklyn is the gorilla in the room, and then Queens is behind that, then Manhattan, then Bronx, then Staten Island.
Right, and your votes are anonymous, right?
Our votes are anonymous.
Okay.
We're assigned a clicker. An electronic clicker when we register to go there, and it has our weighted vote built into it. And if we're carrying any proxies, those proxies are also, so say for example, I'm in 106. I have a female partner. So on the state committee, the way they do it is you have to have one male, one female representing the area.
Okay,
So
got it.
if for example, if my female partner isn't able to make it and she gives me her proxy, they then add her proxy, her vote to my clicker. So it will be internally already built in within my clicker.
Gotcha. Okay.
And those votes are done anonymously. So the way it works is putting a candidate on the ballot is once everyone is assigned their clicker, you get in your seat. They have a big screen up, a huge screen up where you can see your number. And the candidates will get usually a first and a second, but some of them were doing a first, a second, and a third, and then a third and third. And, they had all these people that would come up who were going to endorse them and give speeches of why we should be voting for endorsing this candidate to be on the ballot.
Okay.
And so that would transpire, and we would then take a vote as a whole. And if a candidate got 25% or more in that vote, they would automatically be added to the ballot. If they were unopposed, we would take the vote, and if they got 100%, then we would come up and vote and say, they were 100% unanimous in acclamation, and they would be then added to the vote with no other candidates opposing them in the primary. This is for primary only. And so Tish James was first. And when Tish came up, obviously there was no one challenging her, and she got 100%. Next was Tom DiNapoli, and he has two opponents. And let me step back for a minute. In order to even get involved in this process, you have to get a letter from at least 10 state committee people that said that they are willing to allow you to go through that process.
Okay.
Right. So each one of these candidates that are trying to get on the ballot, they have to have at least 10 state committee people willing to say, hey, yeah, we should give them an opportunity to go through this process.
And let me just jump in there for a second. Now, prior to this, when they, with these people giving you these letters, Antonio had really built up a lot of support in the, downstate as well as upstate, but downstate it really built up a lot of support in Brooklyn and in various and in various sort of areas, Queens and various where he'd been heavily campaigning. I just want to set that as some of the context.
Right, and so we'll get to that because it's a little different. So when DiNapoli came up first, one of the candidates that's actually going to, supposedly is raising a lot of money and that's going to primary DiNapoli, did not get the 10 letters to actually go through the process. But the other candidate, I'll leave his name off because I'm not supportive. But the other candidate did receive 10 letters and did go through the voting process. And when we took the vote, he received 10% of the vote. So he did not make it onto the ballot in that process. He still can petition his way onto the ballot before, I think that whenever the petition starts. So he could petition his way on and still end up primary in DiNapoli in June.
Okay.
Next up was the gubernatorial vote. And so there was a lot going around, a lot of swirling going around. The media was there because when, Governor Hochul picked her running mate, Andrea Adams, it caused a bit of stir. And the rumor was that Brooklyn was pretty upset about it and that they were going to withdraw their endorsement for the governor.
Because Andrea Adams is from the western part of the state?
She's from Queens.
Oh, and from Queens. Okay.
Yeah. And so, there was that going back and forth. But I had already knew, when you look at Brooklyn is so diverse, right? You have a very diverse borough there. And a lot of the younger people who are very progressive, members of the DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists
Okay,
of
good.
America, which is also the party that, or the wing that Mondani is a part of,
Right. Okay.
right? And so though the younger crowd really kind of separates themselves from anybody that's moderate, which is where our governor is. She's pretty moderate. So they were behind Antonio, but your older entrenched, people who have been around that will probably be more in my age range, were firmly behind the governor. And so when the vote was counted, Antonio ended up getting 14% of the vote, and the governor got the rest. And so he did not receive enough votes at that time to automatically get added to the ballot.
But let me ask you,
And
what
so,
what impact did Mondani's is endorsement of Hochul? What impact did that have on this process?
well, a lot, because the convention vote was on Friday. Mamdani endorsed her Thursday night. So all day Thursday, when we were having like these, socials, cheesecake socials, and side events and all that, that's what people were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't see, Randall, what you don't see is people who are members of the DSA, how that they would possibly be able to line up with someone who is a real moderate, right? So you don't, if you're looking from the outside, you're looking and you go, wow, what's the relationship there? How do they align up? Because, they haven't been aligned for all these years, but maybe the thought is maybe Mondani has a plan to bringing them all together. And one of the things that it started showing, that you started seeing, at least I did, is that he was starting to firmly become the voice of the party, at least in New York.
Uh-huh.
You saw that, because I think with Antonio running, the governor had got weakened. I think Antonio wasn't super strong. So both of them, they weren't on equal footing, but neither one of them were on firm footing. He had, meaning Mamdani, had firm footing. Like, you could see he was controlling the levers, and by him endorsing her, made everybody go, and
Well,
and it shifted a lot of progressives. But what it also did is it made the Working Families Party shut down. Now anybody who deals with the Working Family Party knows they usually endorse a month or so ahead of any other party.
mm-hmm.
That didn't happen in the gubernatorial race. They still hadn't endorsed anybody yet, and they waited until after the convention and after Antonio didn't get the 25%, and he was going to have to petition his way on, to then weigh in and say, you know what, we're going to choose not to endorse in this race.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that they chose not to endorse. Now, the curious thing to me is that, if you look at Antonio's platform and policies that he was putting forth, they were solidly progressive. And
correct. Yeah.
when you look at Hochul, Governor Hochul, she had told Moldani that, she wasn't in favor of taxing the rich. She wasn't really in favor of this whole bus thing. And so a lot of his plank platform major reforms that he wanted to do, she's saying, I'm not going to reform. And they all take money to make happen. So that's really what makes this even more curious, why he would endorse someone who is publicly opposing some of the major things that he's asking to do.
So you remember though, the first week that he got sworn in, 8 days after he got sworn in, she met with him in New York City and announced that they were going to put New York State on a path to universal child care. And they were going to start that by offering child care for kids that were 2 years old. But the thing that bothered me about that, Randall, is it was for only kids that are in New York City.
Oh.
And so I personally got disturbed by that, because as someone who served in state government for a long time, when the governors were coming forth, even going back before Cuomo got in office, when Malcolm Smith, he had other stuff in the Senate, but when Malcolm Smith took over as head of the Senate before it got broke up with the four defections and all that, his message was one New York. He kept saying it, one New York, meaning they were trying to make the legislative bodies understand that there's an upstate and a downstate, and we need to govern together instead of acting like, we're separated. And this was a push from the DRC, is that we need to get downstate to recognize us, and we're still pushing for that. And the DRC is the Democratic Rural Conference, which represents 42 counties upstate with a population of 100,000 or less. And so, when Cuomo got in office, if you ever listen to his speeches, he used to say it all the time, e pluribus unum, right? Out of all comes one. And so, again, he was saying that so you can have upstate and downstate work together. Now, I say that because with this whole thing of doing 2-year-old daycare for only downstate, you now has shown that you're willing to separate downstate from upstate. Mm-hmm. And the problem that comes with that, if you listen to Mondani's speech, when he gave his speech, he says, look, we have a $12 billion funding gap in New York City that needs to be addressed, which means everything needs to be on the board. We need to tax the millionaires and billionaires, and we need to redo the formula of monies of how it's distributed in the state. Right, he said that 52% of the money is being generated in downstate, but they only get 40% back. And that's what he said, which means he wants more money that downstate is generating that's going to the state. He wants more of that money to come back for downstate only. And my thing as someone who lived upstate, Randall, I said it's a dangerous game because if you're going to start making counties think that way, well, look, if I were a county executive, and I'm not, but if I were, and let's say I'm an executive county director of Columbia County, and you hit me with that, and you come to me and you said, hey, you know what, we need to cut some of your services up here because we're going to need to send more money downstate. I'm saying, you know what, you have all these power lines and all these water lines and all that going through my county. I am now going to start charging a carry charge for all these lines going through my county, they're going downstate. So for the amount that you're going to cut me, let's say you cut me $100,000, I'm charging $100,000 carry charge for that to go to. And if you don't like it, dig it up and run it around my county and go to some other county. Mm-hmm. This I'm saying this. So my point to all that is, don't start thinking you're contributing more than everybody else in the state. We all are contributing, maybe in different ways, but we are all contributing. And we shouldn't be leading the state towards that war. And I'm waiting to see how this plays out because this is all going to play out within the budget.
No, I agree. And it's such a curious thing because if you look at Antonio's stance on the climate, if you look at his stance on immigration, if you know all of these sort of signature issues that progressives care about, he was had leadership in advancing, I think, policies that really wanted to address those things. And one of the things out in the campaign trail he would talk about a lot was triangulation. And so many politicians always looking at, the political implications of everything that they were doing rather than looking at the right solution for the people and voting very strategically. And he wanted to really break that down, that hegemony, and really set up a government that was going to really be much more responsive to the people. And I thought that was something that we're all looking for. So again, that's why I think I and many people in Columbia County are disappointed in the way that it seems got boxed out.
Well, I mean, look, Randall, politics is really a chess match. It's a game.
I know you're going to say it. I knew you were going to go there.
It is. It's a game, and so pieces get moved around and deals are cut. And that article that Politico just released, you show where deals were made, and Mondani appoints the head of the Working Families Party to the International Affairs, and then they clearly show She has zero experience in international affairs, but she was a good advocate. She fought for people, and so I'm going to appoint her. That clearly looks like a deal that was cut, right? And part of that is, hey, you endorse me. I'm going to put you in this position, but also don't step on my toes. I endorse Kathy Hochul. I don't want you to get involved in this race. I call up Antonio. I let him know, hey, we're not going to get involved. And his campaign has collapsed. And so, everything is good moving forward as a party. Where the wait and see is he going to be able to bring the moderates and the progressives together and make it one unified party? And I guess that's what he's trying to do. And what I will say is, Randall, is I'm not totally against the governor. So me supporting Antonio and hoping that he would be able to primary her. Me being against her wasn't my motivation. I wanted to see a primary because it was going to push issue. Like, I don't think we're doing enough on housing. And I think the people that are surrounding her who is giving her advice on housing is not giving her full and correct advice. Same thing with our prison system. I don't think people around her is giving her good advice on how to handle our prison system. And then when you look at, for example, New York for All, right? She rewrites it with the local crimes, local cops bill, and it's really dealing with the 287G agreements.
Right.
But it kind of stripped out the part is it's not just the cops that are cooperating with ICE. It's all our internal agencies as well. If you go to probation or if you're going to DSS or if you're going to any of those agencies, there's nothing in the law saying that they can't cooperate. That was in the original New York for All, is that not only wouldn't cooperate with police officers, but our agencies wouldn't cooperate either. And so that part is now has been removed. So it's things like that when you look at it, you go, hey, yeah, we're moderate, but where do we stand on actually protecting people and working for people, not party?
And that again, I think is one of the disturbing things. I think Kathy's a nice person, Ms. Hochul, and I think that there's a lot of common sense policies in there. I think some of the give backs were very political and populist in nature.
I would have voted no on most of them.
Yeah, but I think but people like that. People like that, and I think that's one of the things that I think it was designed to do, and it did what it was designed to do. But just on a purist perspective, she's not progressive, and I think that in this time of what New York is going for, and I've seen some of her current Facebook ads talking about how horrible it is to remove kids, of ICE removing kids, and from the family, and obviously that's terrible. It's a terrible thing. Nobody would want to see that. But I think that, and I think we spoke about this yesterday. I think that when you look at really trying to solve the problem, those policies that are happening, like she's not saying, hey, I want this to stop. I think she's saying, hey, I don't want to see it. I want it to be nicer and more polite looking, but I don't want to, but not necessarily in favor of it stopping or, not having ICE in New York, or maybe giving more money to, more money to local officials. So local officials, because I think what everybody agrees on is, and I mentioned this in the other segment earlier today, I think most people can agree on having, if you've committed a crime or a violent crime in New York or in the state or in the country, and you're not a citizen, you should be you should definitely have to be dealing with immigration issues, sending you back. If you have, but what we're talking about is, and I'm not talking about, and when we're looking at crime, I'm not just saying, the reason why I said a violent crime is that a lot of time what's happening is that people are going to court, and they go to court on their regular visit, and then the judge dismisses their case. Now they don't have an active case, so now that they're in the country illegally, so ICE's theory is, well, now you've committed a crime. well, you were following the rules, but now you don't have an active case. So now you're in here without status. So now you've committed a crime, you're a criminal. And that's not the same thing as a violent criminal. That's not the same thing as somebody who's already been in the system that committed a crime. So there's a whole different way. And I'm just not sure how well she's going to really stand up against the Trump overreaches. And in the last conversation, we talked about what's happening in Minnesota, perhaps even happening here because ICE has now got control over, in an article that I read earlier today, a huge warehouse in the Hudson Valley that they're prospectively going to be using to house detainees. So this is coming our way.
Right. And the thing is, though, Randall, is if you listen to what Trump said, right, this is the thing that Antonio was getting to. We're constantly trying to be reactionary to what he's saying instead of being progressive. And getting ahead of what he's trying to do. But if you listen to him when he got on this whole immigration thing, is we're going to go after the criminals and all these people, the bad people, and MS-13. We hate MS-13. And look, we, the police, and everybody else, they know where MS-13 is. How come we don't see them over there knocking down their doors? Or what about the Albanian gangs, or the Chinese gangs, or the Russian gangs? How come we aren't knocking their? Look, they're prevalent. They're not even hard to find.
I know. I mean, but you're at Home Depot taking the low-hanging fruit. People are just trying to survive, working day jobs and
waiting
and things
outside
like
the school
that.
buses and all that kind of. I mean, it's ridiculous. So this is why people was upset with ICE. It's not that we are saying, hey, we don't want any kind of force in there removing all the illegals that are causing crimes in this country. Absolutely, we do. But those very people that you said you was going to go over there and go get them. We want you to go get them. It's you guys that are choosing not to go over there because they're acting afraid. Instead, they want to go and grab moms and kids and all this kind of stuff. That's where the anger lies. And this is more to the fact of what Antonio was saying. Hey, ban them. Don't allow them to wear masks. Make them wear name tags.
Right.
Make them show their badge. All of this is just, these are easy things to do, right?
Right. This is accountability 101. This is, law enforcement around 101. We shouldn't even be discussing why this is happening. But as you say, these norms that have been broken, I'm not sure that she's going to fight from the governor's perspective, being able to resist those things, because I think that a lot of people are still interested in trying to make deals with Trump and think that they can somehow escape the basic levels of dishonesty and disingenuousness that he has. And that for me is sort of a failed policy, as you said, not being proactive.
Here's what I do believe. I believe that Zoran will fight for those things. I do.
I hope so.
But here's the problem, Randall. Is he fighting for those things for New York City, or is he fighting for those things for New York State? And there's where the rubber meets the road. I'm like, great, Zoran. You're putting forth good policy ideas and all that for your people, the people you represent. You don't represent me up here though, and so now I now need to have my state representative fight for me as well as you fighting for your people. I should be able to have the governor fighting for all of us,
exactly,
not just you.
And
right?
that goes full circle back to the whole political calculus of saying, well, I'm going to align myself with someone who says, at least previously, that they're not in favor of some major tenets of what I'm trying to do. I'm going to back that person in and get what in return we're unsure of. And so I think that there's a big question mark there. And again, as you said, I mean, politics are a full contact sport.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of moving around and opportunistic behavior taking place. But at the end of the day, what we really want, what we all really want, is for the citizens of New York to be well served. I mean, if everybody wants to be protected. People want to be well served and and have their desires pushed by their elected officials. And I'm not sure that that's happening. And this is, again, where I think Antonio was really standing against some of the sort of Democratic deal making, behind the scene power plays. And I think he said that as lieutenant governor, you could really see this up close. The power plays that were happening that are really stagnating New York in major ways, the state in major ways. And people do want to see change, and they do want to see the governments be effective in instituting those changes.
When you look at all the players that came out, Randall, like, for example, you have AOC, who came out and endorsed the governor. But Antonio was pretty fierce in talking about building something that was outside of the political machine, and he understood the risk around doing that. And it was a big calculus and a big risk, politically. Not personally for him. I think he'll be fine. He's a smart young man. But politically, it was a calculated risk. And when you're looking at the machine and people who are looking to actually move on to bigger and better things, like AOC, there's no doubt about it that she wants to be president or vice president. I firmly believe that. I know that she wants to challenge for senator, for whoever seat is coming up. But you can see she's now making world tours. Like, she's over in Germany, and she's in giving speeches all around the world now, basically, with the Bernie Sanders kind of message, and she's picking up that mantle and doing it well. But you can see she has a larger agenda. Her going outside of because look, everybody knows California and New York are the tip of the spear. These are two, right, in the Democratic side. Her going outside of the machine to, say, hey, I'm running a people first kind of thing, isn't going to work, especially on the national stage, right? Because she's going to need that machine a lot to go to where she wants to go on the next level. So she wasn't going to step out. When you look at Letitia James, who also got behind the governor, she too is not a rising star. She's a star in the party.
Yes.
And there are a lot of avenues for her. She could possibly, be the next attorney general, depending on who the president is, right? Or she too maybe could be the next senator or even governor, right? But if she were to step outside of the machine and endorse Antonio, or even stay quiet, she too probably could find herself stagnant. She wouldn't lose her race as the local attorney, because she's one of the best in the country, right? And one of the most effective.
Right.
But look, the party is cruel. And if you think you can operate and step outside the party and you get that calculus wrong, poof, goes your next steps.
I agree. Hold on, let me just do a quick station ID. You're listening to WGXC. Listen to Supported Radio 90.7, Hudson, Acra, Caro, and thank you so much for tuning in. This is a Tuesday afternoon radio show with your host, Randall Martin, and I am chopping up with Bill Hughes, and we are talking state and national politics. And so we'll get back to it, but I just wanted to have that said. But one of the things that Antonio talked about, and I think it really resonated with me, and I'm sure resonated with you and others, is that we have Democratic majorities here in New York, yet income inequality, climate change, housing, a lot of these things are not really being addressed in major ways in a Democratic framework. What's happening with that? Like, we have the votes to do it, presumably, but they're not really happening in the way. And so a lot of people are suffering with incredibly unaffordable housing, I should say, unaffordable food. All that stuff is happening here under a majority Democrat, officials. Why is that?
Well, when you look at New York State, Randall, it really is a state that is of 2 to 3 different sides, right? You have the Uber, like you have New York State actually has the most billionaires of any city in the world, right? So you have that aspect. Then you have the middle class, and then we have the super poor, as Antonio was telling you. You know, 1 in 5 people are in poverty. We have kids are in poverty. We have 1 in 4 that can't come up with $500 for pay an emergency if they had a family emergency. You know, we have real poverty in this state that people aren't talking about. But then we have uber wealthy. Like we have people living in New York State that'll work 2, 3, 4, $5 billion. We even have some of those people living in Hudson, which is like crazy to a lot of us who grew up in Hudson.
Right,
And
right.
and so when you see that kind of that income disparity, you know, what they call it, the K-shaped economy that's getting larger. When you see that in New York State, then there's no wonder why we're not getting investments in, you know, a more affordable housing. Because affordable to who, right? Because if I'm saying affordable to someone that moved out of New York City who has a 7-figure income, well, affordable to them is way out of my price range, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and when we start talking about affordable to who?
Well,
That's
it's a
that's the
regional
first
thing.
thing.
Well, it used to be a regional thing until the
Exactly.
pandemic. The pandemic
Ex-
made it like not a localized thing. Now, like obviously the New York region was its own. Westchester was its own. Hudson Valley is its own. Going out west, I mean, and there are different levels of these economies. But I think the pandemic changed that a bit because now it made people migrate out of those areas and now impact the pricing of housing, you know, all throughout New York, especially in the Hudson Valley, which has now caused this unaffordability crisis. And
Well,
so this is something that we're dealing with. But I'm saying on the political level, there are more
mhm.
things that should be done in theory, especially if you look at it from a progressive point of view, that are not being done. And I think that he brought that up and say, you know, in these democratic areas, like we talked about, there was I can't think of the there was a climate change bill, there's an immigration bill, all these things are progressive and yet they're not moving forward.
well, for me, the ones that were the most important was the health care for all,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Is because look, Randall, was no secret. You saw what Trump was trying to do with the big beautiful bill, and also with the ACA, right? He was trying to cut the ACA
Yep.
subsidies, and was like, "Oh, let's send some money to people and let them take care of their own
Yeah, I'm gonna
health care."
send you a
Well,
couple
we know that
$1,000 and
that
that's gonna
yeah,
take care of
that's
your
a
health
failure waiting
needs.
to happen right
Right.
there for everybody. That's middle class to low income, right? So we know that wasn't going to work. But so instead of us sitting back and waiting for that to happen, if we pass the New York Healthcare Act, we would set New York State on a path to where we will be creating our own universal system within New York State. Can't speak to
Absolutely.
other states, but for the people who live in New York State, that's something that we should be fighting for.
Absolutely.
When we talk about affordable housing, not affordable rental housing where we're giving all this money to the developers and letting them set the standards. We want to create, and this is what Antonio was talking about, affordable first-time home buyers where people can
Yes.
actually buy a home that they can afford and start building family equity. And
Right.
and that's the path we should be moving down to instead of, hey, you know, I know, not that we should eliminate that, but that shouldn't be our only thing, right? I know that you build affordable housing. I'm going to give you $10 million. You're going to build 70 units, and then you're going to set 5 aside that meets the AMI standards. You know, okay, great. So now you created more rentable housing. You're enriching yourselves, and then you created 20% over here that's going to be for people of the
Right, you're giving people the crumbs of it,
right.
and but he also talked about capacity. Back in the day, the government used to build those. I guess maybe the GC. I don't know exactly how it happened back in the day, but they were much more. The state was much more actively involved in having the capacity to build
Mhm.
and create this housing. That model of housing has gone away in favor of LIHTC, low income tax credits, where we're saying you build the building and we'll give you these tax write-offs for building the building and all these other incentives to build the building. And so you make the rich even richer on the backs of the poor. And we're saying that's the only way because we've removed the capacity of the government to do these kinds of things. And I think when you make housing just a total free market exercise, you kind of get what we're looking at. You're getting this, and again with the involvement of hedge funds and all this, you're getting a kind of winner takes all scenario, which leaves a lot of people out in the cold.
Well, so one of the things, Randall, behind the scenes, I was really, really pushing Antonio's senior staff on is the fact that he or whoever is governor, Governor Hochul should be looking at the same thing, should create a new category called emerging technologies and focusing on AI and blockchain. And the reason why that is, I don't think a lot of people who are in our circles talk about this, but Texas is very, very aggressive about wooing the financial companies out there. And they have built a new electronic, they're calling it Yall Street in Dallas, right? Not Wall Street, Yall Street. And it's fully animated and on blockchain. And you look at now, go on Google and see how many companies are actually moving from the East Coast to now Dallas, Texas, because they don't need a trading floor,
right.
They don't need all that staff, and they could still now they could do settlement, within seconds versus days, financial settlements. And I'm telling you right now, New York City and New York State will find themselves in a real pickle should a lot of these companies up and move and go to Dallas outside of New York, because they had record profits on Wall Street this year. But if you start to see some of those companies moving their headquarters to Dallas, it's a real issue. And I told Anton, I said, you as a potential governor candidate better be talking about this, because that's the lifeline of New York State, and Zoran and all these other guys better be focusing on it too, because it's not just jobs that are going to leave because of AI. It's jobs that are going to leave because their headquarters is moving to another state.
Absolutely. And I talked about this a little bit on the previous segment. I mean, we're not talking enough about the impact of AI. Like, we talk a lot about Trump and what's going on in the federal government, but we're not talking about the impact that AI is going to have on the state, on the workers of the state, the displacement, the training that's needed to re-employ people. Those discussions are not being had. And
Correct.
I think that we need to position this state to be able to be competitive and to create and be a center of creating these new jobs in this new economy. So training people in AI, training people for whatever the offshoots of what this new emerging society is going to need should be priority number one. Yes, we're doing some stuff with chips and and the various acts, but I think that the thinking about AI and society or how it's going to bring is very outmoded. And we're not really being progressive in that area. And I think the people are going to pay the price. And I think that Antonio not being in the race and the ideas that he represented was a loss for the people of New York. It wasn't just a political loss, it's a loss for the people being able to progress in a good fashion.
That's why I really want, whether he won or not, I wanted to see the debates on the issues, because
Absolutely.
it was going to push whoever came out on top as a leader, it was going to push them more towards things that were going to benefit the people. Because when you look at Micron, Randall, all these people are now happy about Micron moving to Syracuse, and it's going to create tens of thousands of jobs. Well, you mark it here. I said this. We will be lucky if you get 1,000 human workers in that factory. That place is going to be automated.
Absolutely.
It's going to have AI. It's going to have robotics. You are not going to get 10,000 jobs out of that. And you heard it here first. I'm telling you that. It's going to be an automated new technology factory.
Because I think they think about this, again, in this outmoded thing. Like, I'm going to give you a lot of money, and then you're going to create these jobs, but not looking at the impact in AI to say, you're going to create employment, but those employment are going to be for robots.
Right.
And what is the human aspect that you're really going to employ? And if you're not employing them, how can this money they were giving you be made to work? Or what kind of requirements can we put on these companies to actually employ people that are going to be able to now continue to participate in society and make money without this whole idea of we're just going to give everybody a UBI and and that's how you're going to live. So there's a lot of questions, and it's always so great to talk to you, and we come a full circle. We're coming up on just a few minutes before the end of this Tuesday afternoon show, and it's always so great to talk to you about these issues. Let me ask you, from your political perspective, what should the people of New York be looking to do? Because again, I think these ideas that we talk about are important ideas. I think what Antonio was talking about was very important, and that we're not being heard. And as you said, and by not having these debates heard and having the sort of hegemony that's going on now rule the day, we're losing information. So what should people really be focused on, and how can they help make government work best for them? You've got a minute and a half.
Well, I'll get it done pretty quick. So we have, at least in the Hudson Valley, we have a really, really engaged and great senator, state senator in Michelle Hinchy.
Yes.
We should reach out to her and do a little more work through her, and I think we could get some things done. Yes. We have in 106, we have a primary between, two I think is strong people, engage with them and learn what they're about, and also make them move towards the issues that will better suit us versus going in there voting along with the party. Mm-hmm. And lastly, we need to get behind Governor Hochul now. Like she's the standard bearer and leader of our party, and we definitely don't want to see Bruce Blakely in office, who's going to come there and actually be a parent, if not even more right than Trump.
Do you think he has a chance? Real quick.
Well, look, you can never say never.
Okay.
Right? People are unhappy. People are not just unhappy with Hochul. They're unhappy, Randall, with the moderate Democratic Party.
Yes.
You see it. People's electric bills are going through the roof. Housing costs are going up. Grocery costs, and it's not really a total blame of the Democrats, because a lot of this was being driven by the tariffs that Trump had put forth. Mm-hmm. But we're not doing anything to combat it, so we're going to take the brunt for it. So get behind the governor, push her towards don't let downstate leaders push them towards policies that's going to be for downstate only.
Yes.
She needs to govern this state as one, and that's what we need to do right now.
That's a lot of wisdom, man. That's a tall order, a lot of wisdom. People have to be engaged. This is the time for people to be paying attention to what's going on in the federal level, in the state level. And if you're voting, make sure that your politicians know what it is that you are looking for them to do. Get behind those things. And if they're not educated in things, whether it be AI or the future, let's educate them. Let's let them know what's going on. Well, that's it. Thank you, Bill, for this great interview for the Tuesday afternoon radio show. We will always have you back on because, we have such great conversations. But it's all thanks to you, the listeners out there at WGXC. So we thank you very much. This is Randall Martin for the Tuesday afternoon radio show. And we are out, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening.
Have a good day, everyone.